All right, guys, as the French say, part deux. This is part two with Sarah Mansoori. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
You know, like I was telling you before, that ankle bracelet still feels real on my ankle, even though I didn't commit any crimes. Here we are still, sheltering in place. Although I will say this, I'm getting out a little bit more, still taking my mask, of course, and still social distancing, but I'm amazed how many people like nothing's happening. Like you guys do know there's a pandemic, right? But
Right.
it's amazing. They're like right here. I don't know if you ever remember the Seinfeld episode of The Close Talker. It was Judge Reinhold, where
Yes.
he would talk like this. Hi, how are you? How's your day? That's kind of how it looks in some of these parks that I was visiting. Like, "Hey, where you been? How you been? You good? Well, your breath certainly smells good. You know?
It's
I'm like,
true.
wow, okay, COVID, what? But other than that, the weather's been fantastic, as you know, and things are marching along.
They
Business seems
are.
to be, and we talked about this a little bit, and I'll ask you here is, some people, it's kind of a feast or famine, it seems, right? Some people are doing extremely well, and then some other people are just, it's crickets. It seems like they're not doing any business. And by the way, it's for all industries. Like my
Right.
business, I have some people who are not doing anything, and I'm like super swamped. You were telling me too that folks that are crickets, and then others. You got a couple of big projects going on. So let's start. Well, how is your industry now? For those of you who don't know or didn't watch the first video, so Sarah is a unique mix of not only doing construction management, correct, but
Yes.
also doing the interior design. And in this part, we're going to be talking about the interior design. But tell me a little bit about more so on the interior design part. What is it you're seeing out there? Because I mean, look, for the most part, I think the interior design piece is seen as a discretionary income kind of play on
Sure.
house, right? It's not something where, the average person who doesn't have any money is thinking about interior design, And if they are, it probably has to do with IKEA or Costco or something like that,
Right.
right?
Right.
Their version. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that it's usually not a topic of hiring someone. So tell me what you're seeing during these times, how interior design is playing out in the COVID-19 time.
Yeah, I think it is. It's certainly going to be interesting to see, not just now, but I also think how in the future how this whole pandemic and sheltering in place changes everything in the design world. But I would say, at least in terms of like things that I'm seeing right now, are you know, for homeowners who do own their own home, I'm seeing them want to invest a lot actually in the outdoors. They want to make some improvements to their yard for the first time, and they want to add a hot tub, or if they have the room, a pool, or at a minimum, just try and make their outdoor space, which is often, to a certain degree, even more so than interiors, usually pushed towards the end of the priority list. I'm seeing a lot of people want to spend more just time and energy and resources into that. And then I think when it comes to interiors, I mean, I certainly am seeing, even if it's just in terms of friends and colleagues and people who, like you mentioned, don't necessarily have the money to hire a professional. They are obviously spending more time at home, and so they're trying to figure out creative solutions to, address with the whole family being in closer quarters, and identifying office space for multiple people in the home. How do you create different sound barriers, that type of thing. So I'm certainly seeing that develop, and I anticipate that that will continue to be just a trend that people are going to be more
Yeah,
focused on.
yeah,
And then, I think, again, for those people who do have the resources and time to hire and work with a designer, they're definitely, I think, fast tracking projects that they may have been putting off, because again, they're at home and they're spending more
yeah.
time there, and they want to make the improvements that they've been putting off.
Makes total sense. Is it a myth that you have to have a ton of money to hire an interior designer like yourself? Or can it start in small phases and then work the relationship as you go? Or tell me how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, I think every designer is different. And so there's certainly, whether it's more junior designers and people who are starting out in their career, obviously going to be more affordable. Somebody like myself, I'm, certainly a little more middle career in my path. So, but I try to work with clients who don't necessarily have a ton of resources to be creative with them. Where I may work with them for a few hours and kind of give them a plan that they can then implement themselves. So I try to be creative with people as well, and
Yeah,
as much as the fun big projects are great to work on, I find a lot of uh, just personal satisfaction and in terms of just keeping my sort of tools sharp and problem solving keen. Working on small projects and working with smaller budgets, requires a different set of skills to
that's
problem
true.
solve.
That's true. How would you say interior design has evolved in the last 10 years? In San Francisco, I've seen more of going from that Victorian feel, the old world feel, to now seeing a lot of these properties that are coming up that are very Norwegian feeling, very hygienic, very, modern, a lot of glass. What have you been seeing, particularly here in San Francisco?
Yeah, I think absolutely. There's certainly, I mean, and I kind of attribute a lot of it to Apple. I feel like really sort of elevating everybody's education and exposure to design. So I feel like the interiors and architecture is to a certain degree been kind of influenced by everybody's education in industrial design, which has been really clean and has been really contemporary. So I think that will continue. I think that certainly there's always people, who have their own personal eclectic tastes, and or like looks or aesthetics or spaces that are more layered. But I think, we've been definitely seeing, I think things have been kind of in the sort of cooler gray toned um, type interiors. And I am starting to see a little bit of a momentum and movement towards warmth. So I think it'll be interesting to see if that kind of continues to grow and evolve,
I
or not.
see.
Yeah.
So like brick and timber being like much like you have behind you, being
Yeah.
incorporated even into a very contemporary design.
Yeah, or just even in terms of, I feel like a lot of the palettes have been in the grays and the whites, whether it's been, through concrete or stone or marble or even paint colors. My interior also, but seeing more of the travertines and just the warmer marbles, the warmer stones, the warmer paint palettes, and so I think that might be, we'll see a little bit more of that.
Okay, I see. So how much, and you mentioned something or you alluded to it, how much does, for example, like an Apple corporation, how much does a corporation like that who's in the design business in reality, you look at the phones are beautiful or the laptops, how much do they influence interior design?
I think a fair amount. I mean, I think that it basically, there used to be a saying, at least when I was in design school, that sort of like trends would always kind of start in the fashion world and then sort of trickle down or spread out from there. And and then you'd kind of see the finality of that kind of in cars. And I think industrial design and companies like Apple are definitely kind of in that forefront with fashion, where they are changing all the time and they are, coming out with new products all the time. And so and I think the accessibility to it, right? Just everybody has a phone and a laptop. And so I think with that accessibility, uh, it definitely influences everybody's sort of exposure to design in general.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. So cars, fashion, real estate, and industrial design, like cell phones, I guess they would all intersect and kind
Yeah,
of take cues from each other. Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So what would you tell a person who's thinking about doing a renovation, whether it's medium or major? before they even hire someone like you? What would you recommend they start doing?
I always recommend my clients, if they haven't started already, to whether it's on Pinterest or whether it's through magazine articles or books, just finding images of spaces that they like, and they may not even necessarily know why, but a lot of times, you know, we all have these sort of associations with words that we use. So, and I've worked with clients where they'll come in and they'll say, I hate the color blue. Don't want to see the color blue in anything. Um, and then I'll ask them to pick out, some images that they like for a living room per se. And all of a sudden, they'll maybe pick out something that is blue. And so I'll point that out to them. And all of a sudden the conversation is, oh, well, you know, that's not royal blue. It's royal blue that I have a problem with. So I think that there's just, you kind of have to, establishing a visual vocabulary is really important, because we all have different meanings of these very subjective words. And so it's really easy to look at a picture and say, this is the look that I'm going for, or I love this couch, or I love this marble countertop. But to be able to say that and actually point to an example of it helps the designer, if you're working with a designer, but I think also helps just inform and educate the homeowner as to what they like and don't like.
Yeah, that makes sense. And since we're living in a time where all things internet, right?
Right.
Or I would think too that maybe, going to YouTube, and maybe even going to open houses to look at other houses,
Yeah,
you can get some really great cues on and ideas of what maybe you want to do, right? Because it's hard to
definitely.
start out. I mean, not everybody, what I've noticed is not everybody really has an eye for walking into space and seeing it. They just don't. I mean, for you, I'm sure it
True.
comes like second nature. You walk into a space, you go, oh, wow, I can do a lot with this space. I can do
Yeah.
this, and do that, and put a waterfall here. But most people can't walk in and just go in and go, yeah, I have nothing,
Yeah.
right? It is a special talent. I've noticed. Not everybody can visualize.
It is true, yeah. And I would say, even for myself, I feel like I do have the ability to visualize space pretty well. But at the same time, even, with 20 years of experience, I would say almost on every project, there's something that surprises me, and sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's a bad thing. But it is sort of the nature of the work that we do. I think there is,
Yeah.
though, in terms of too, like you were saying, whether it's YouTube. I think that there are sort of startup companies. I think Modsy is one, who are sort of like trying to fill that gap between homeowner and designer, where you can kind of work with an online company who will sort of fill that gap a little bit, and work with you on how to design your space, and then sort of marry your physical space with actual chairs, actual table lamps, and so that you can kind of really see what it all looks
Like a
like.
little virtual kind of take first.
Exactly, exactly.
What do you think of those platforms? I mean, the ones that I've looked at,
I think, yeah, I mean, I think if, you know, I think that they definitely sort of fit a niche. Um, but I think that there is a sterility isn't exactly the right word, but I just think that it fits the person who knows that they want a very specific look, that they provide. And so if there's any deviation from wanting what they provide, I think it's not exactly a great fit.
that's where you run into trouble. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. That makes sense. Well, thank you again so much for all your great insight. This is
Yeah.
Sarah. My last question: how do people get a hold of you?
I did bring my business card,
Oh,
so
nice.
know,
Look how nice that is. You know what's funny too, and I believe sometimes that you see this pairing of industries people are in with their last names. Like to me, Mansoori just says interior design. I don't know why. Like maybe you were just born to do this, like your last name, seriously. Like when I look at it on a card, like if you gave it to me at a networking event, I'd be like, you're an interior designer, right? I don't know why. It just kind of speaks that interior design language. Well, again, thank you so much. Folks, if you have any questions or you want to expand this discussion with her based on your particular situation, I highly recommend that you call Sarah, because you know what, I only interview people that are best of class and people who really know what they're doing, but they also have a heart for what they do. I've always said this, if you start out with a job, you migrate into a career, and then it becomes a calling. Those are the people you want in your tribe, people who what they do, they can't help but do. It's called a calling. So thank you again so much, Sarah. You have a fantastic day. Love
Thanks.
your space, and we
Thanks.
will talk again.
Sounds good.
Have a good one. Be
You
well.
too.